Cars is a movie about racing, humbleness, and small-town quaintness. Cars 2 is a spy movie. Or is it? No, yeah, it's a spy movie. Now, as Cars 2 is a sequel to Cars, all the kids that these movies are for would be expecting characters from the first movie to be in this movie. But because no one in Cars was a spy, as far as we know, that means for this movie to be a spy movie, someone would have to be dragged into a spy story, and subsequently be our main character. But who to pick? Now, we could have Lightning be the main character again, but that would make too much sense, so instead they chose Tow Mater. Now, you may be wondering, why would they choose Tow Mater, who's loud, stupid, annoying, and the worst character in the Cars trilogy? Well, it's very simple, see? Tow Mater is relatable to the kids, who are also loud, stupid, annoying, and the worst character in the Cars trilogy, so it just made sense. Or maybe what happened is they decided they were going to make a sequel to Cars with Mater as the main character, because he was most popular with the kids, and while struggling to come up with a plot, some intern suggested making it a spy movie, and no one realized he was joking. Then again, I've done no research to see if there's an official reason for the movie, so if you know, please tell us in the comments if it's interesting. Even with the hindrance of Mater being the main character, Cars 2 is the most lore-filled movie in the entirety of the world of Cars. Their logo, not mine. But what if, instead of looking at all the lore in this video, I applied the most common theory applied to any piece of media ever to Cars 2? That's right, today we're gonna ask, is Cars 2 a dream? Okay, wait, give me a chance. I'll be upfront. I don't think the writers of Cars 2 intended for the movie to be a dream, so I'm not going to point out a bunch of vague things and plot holes and be like, see, it's clearly a dream, because that would be a waste of everyone's time. I'm not even really saying it is a dream, more that it's a fake story told by Mater, which kind of has the same idea. But I do think that thinking of Cars 2 as a tale told by Mater makes the movie just a little more interesting. So, while I will be explaining why I think the theory has any merit at all, I want the main point of this video to be more about how it makes Cars 2 more interesting. Not, look guys, it's a dream. Okay, now you can leave if you want. Of course, just randomly saying a movie is a tale within the movie without any evidence is pretty stupid. I could claim Die Hard is a dream and it shows he's scared of heights and losing his wife and being barefoot, but that doesn't mean I have a case. So how about I explain myself just a little bit? Now, there is actually more Cars content than just 3 Cars movies and 2 Planes movies. There's also a bunch of shorts about the characters in Cars. A lot of these shorts are Mater's tall tales, which involve ridiculous stories Mater tells about his grand adventures, which didn't happen and nobody believes. At the end of the story, somebody shows up to prove Mater right, though the proof kinda seems to be nonsense. Cars 2 is a movie in which Mater goes on a grand, ridiculous adventure and saves the day in the process. He even gets a girlfriend, Holly Shiftwell, which is the most unbelievable part of it all. At the end of the movie, he's telling this story and nobody believes him, except for Lightning and the other characters who were there. Then again, Mater always says Lightning was there, though usually Lightning says it didn't happen. Then, 2 spies that he was working with, including his girlfriend, show up and prove his story right. Now, if that ending scene didn't exist, this would be a closed case. Cars 2 is just a really long Mater's tall tale. But because the scene with the 2 spies showing up does exist, things get a bit weird. At first look, it seems like proof that the rest of the movie is not a tall tale. However, if we look at Mater's other tall tales, that scene is the common trope in these shorts, and I wouldn't necessarily say that they prove those stories true. So we could say that Cars 2 is just following a similar format to the Tall Tales shorts. And if we wanted to, we could easily say that the scene is in Mater's head, and he's just imagining proving people wrong. Plus, the fact that none of what happens in Cars 2, including Mater's girlfriend, is mentioned in Cars 3 at all, brings some credence to the fact that none of it ever happened. There's a few small concepts that make the movie feel like a tall tale too, including Mater being called the best backwards driver in the world, actually knowing martial arts, and being knighted, which all seems like the exact kind of thing Mater would claim happened in a tall tale. Then we have some evidence that could be considered really bad evidence, but I think is important to bring up. See, Mater's main character trait is that he's stupid, even if he does have some very specific knowledge about cars. By the end of the movie, the 2 spies say Mater's actually really smart, but I gotta say, they're not too smart themselves. Now, most of their stupidity is to move the plot forward, but I don't think that excuses it. Take the reasons they think Mater is a spy. Firstly, he has the device that has some information about the villain that the American spy they're supposed to meet is supposed to have, and the British spies can track that. That's a fair reason. You'd expect the car that has the device to be the car that's supposed to have the device. The other reason is that the code that the British and American spies have is, bad. The code is the British spy saying something accurate about cars, and then the American spies also saying something accurate about cars that would be pretty reasonable to say after the British statement. So not only was the code something actually accurate, it was about cars. You know, the thing that everybody in this universe is. Which makes it feel like anybody could be mistaken as a spy by the British, which of course is exactly what happens. But that's not necessarily Hawley and Finn McMissle's fault. The code was probably come up with some higher-ups who thought they were being clever, but here's the thing. There were plenty of other ways the two should have realized Mater is not a spy. First, at no point does he say he's a spy. In fact, he generally points out he's not a spy. This is brushed aside by Hawley and Finn, thinking he's just really into his character that he plays when he's not spying. Second, literally any time they try to make him do spy things, he is completely clueless. This is not brushed aside, this is just ignored. So, as far as I'm concerned, the genius spies in Cars 2 are idiots, which I think gives credence to the idea that it's all in Mater's head, as you can only tell what you know. So if he were to make characters, they would probably have a similar intelligence to him. Consequently, the idea of your imagination coming from what you know explains a bit more about the movie if it does come from Mater's imagination. Here's the thing. Mater knows about cars, probably better than a lot of other cars, because he's a tow truck and he lives in a car junkyard. That does mean he's surrounded by dead car pieces, but that's besides the point. The point is much of Cars 2's plot revolves around needing a knowledge of cars. I don't have a knowledge of cars, so I have no idea if that knowledge is accurate, but the reason Mater is helpful at all is because he knows more about cars than the British spies. The plot also revolves around racing, something Mater would have gotten quite familiar with over the course of his friendship with Lightning. Add in the fact that the spy aspects of this story are pretty generic for a spy movie, and I can easily imagine spy movies existing in the world of cars. Almost everything fits into this idea that Mater merged stuff he knew together to create a story. The problem is that almost, because the villain's plan is so layered, it seems highly unlikely that Mater would have come up with it. The villain is a type of car called a lemon. Lemons aren't high-quality cars, and the parts for them aren't being made anymore. These specific lemons run an oil driller, and are worried that their business isn't going to be able to survive, and subsequently, neither will they, because natural oil is starting to take over. So, the main villain fakes being an electric car to create a massive race that exists pretty much to advertise a natural oil. It's actually just oil. Then he gets the other villains to shoot a ray at the cars racing to blow up their engines to show that the natural oil is bad, and everyone should go back to oil. I'm condensing this down a lot, but the point is that it is a lot. The only excuse I have is that Mater's tall tales seems pretty over the top all the time too, and the villain's plan is nothing if not over the top. It also includes the idea of this plot being partially for the purpose of not being laughed at anymore, which is something Mater can relate to pretty well. And living around Fillmore has probably made him question oil just a little bit. Plus, I'm not actually trying to convince you that Cars 2 is a tall tale told by Mater, more that there is enough evidence that made me start to think that it could be. Now, it's not necessary that all of Cars 2 be made up by Mater, and I actually think it's a lot more interesting for the beginning scene in Radiator Springs to be real. Here's why. In this scene, Lightning comes home after some time away racing, and Mater and him spend the day causing chaos and having fun, even though Mater maybe had a little more fun than Lightning based on Lightning's face here. At the end of the day, Lightning kindly tells Mater that he'd like to spend the evening alone with his girlfriend Sally. Mater is devastated by this because he thinks he's abandoning him, so he literally pretends to be a waiter at the restaurant to stay with Lightning. This is highly problematic and is never brought up again. During the time at the restaurant, Mater kinda ends up being the reason Lightning races in the World Grand Prix, the series of races for the movie. Now, usually Mater doesn't go on racing trips with Lightning, so he doesn't really know what the world is like. This is apparent throughout the movie. This time, however, Lightning does invite Mater, and chaos ensues. So let's go through this. The actual first scene in Cars 2 is part of the spy plot and introduces Finn McMissile. It's about as generic a spy movie scene as you can get, right down to the villain being someone the spy has dealt with before. So it could be quite likely that it's actually just a spy film Mater watched recently. So, Mater has just watched a spy movie. And he's also been invited to go around the world and help Lightning race. And he doesn't know much about the world. Pretty much all he knows is probably from movies he's watched, like spy movies. So his view of the world is probably a bit skewed, and may involve a little more spy stuff than the world actually has. So he comes up with an idea of what his time in the rest of the world might be like, and his spy movie watching habits, plus his overactive imagination, as shown by Mater's tall tales, give him the idea that while out in the world, he'll end up in his own spy story. But wait, something's been nagging at his mind. What if Lightning abandons him? After all, Lightning wanted to spend some time alone with his girlfriend, a thing that people, and I guess cars, with girlfriends tend to like to do. But most importantly, it wasn't with Mater, which means, based on Mater's clear lack of understanding of how relationships work, from him literally pretending to be a waiter just to spend time with Lightning, when Lightning specifically asked to be alone, that Lightning clearly doesn't want to be friends with Mater anymore. So a subplot arises in Mater's imagination, where Lightning tells Mater to go back home, for the very legitimate reason of Mater just constantly causing a whole slew of problems for Lightning over the course of the movie. And that's actual abandonment. But because Mater refuses to have a sad ending to their friendship in this story, Lightning realizes all his wrongdoing to Mater and literally attaches himself to Mater, gushing about how great a friend Mater is. Mind you, Mater has not shown himself to be a great friend at all in this movie, as Mater has a bomb attached to him. Mater literally has to save Lightning's life, as Lightning pretty much does the Cars equivalent of falling to his knees and begging for forgiveness, which, in the real Cars world, would be extremely out of character for Lightning. But in Mater's imagination is just what he deserves for being reasonably abandoned like that. Subsequently, Mater has begun to realize that people think he's kind of dumb. Most likely based on the fact that in the first Radiator Springs scene, the one I have decided isn't part of the tale, the rival racer in the World Grand Prix just kinda told him. So this trickles into his story too, with even the spies thinking he acts so dumb it must be an act. Mater gets a girlfriend of his own, so he doesn't feel left out, and we even end the story with one of his stories finally being proven right. The entire story fits right into an over-exaggeration of Mater's psyche at the beginning of the movie. And listen, like I said, I know that none of it was real, and theories like that are probably the most common type of theory, so me applying that to Cars 2 of all movies is probably not the most groundbreaking. But I think if it is a story that Mater tells himself, it gives a fascinating new insight into my least favorite character in the Cars trilogy, and that's gotta count for something. However, even if it's not, I think Cars 2 is still an interesting story about a guy that discovers he's an idiot, which is definitely an interesting concept, if not for the fact that the main character is an idiot and extremely annoying. And if you still don't think it's completely made up, that's fine, but look at that. Tell me that's not something that only exists in the nightmares of little cars.